Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. In this video we are going to be taking a look at the Low Class Warriors Challenge for the Fighting Legend Vegeta event, and basically we're going to be taking a look at just how difficult this event is for players to complete. Obviously the Fighting Legend Vegeta event's a bit of a step up from the Fighting Legend Goku event and is actually about on par with the Fighting Legend Goku GT event. So it's a pretty tough event. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's definitely quite an interesting event. It's a pretty good one, I would say, at least for me overall. So yeah, obviously in terms of the mission challenge is to use a whole bunch of low class warrior units. Fortunately, there are some great free-to-play selections in the form of the Team Bardock units. So yeah, there's plenty of great selections from that perspective. But again, of course, that's not to say that's the only thing that you can do. It is super important that we understand that there are some alternative low-class warrior units basically to utilize. So yeah, I would say that there's definitely quite a large amount of concerns to have, basically. So yeah, beyond that, in terms of kind of everything else, before we talk about the team build, there's a couple of leads you could use. You could use the AGL Bardock, you can use the Tech Bardock, you can use quite a few Bardocks as well. So there's quite a lot of various options that you can use to obviously kind of lead the team. And in terms of low class warriors, there's actually quite a few very solid low class warrior units that you could use as well in terms of the actual team itself, like the categories beyond the Team Bardock team. There are actual options that exist. Units like Raditz, physical Raditz, tech Raditz. There is a couple of Gokus as well. So you could use the Kid Goku, you could use a World Tournament Goku, you could use obviously the Great Ape Goku. There's plenty great kind of options that you can use that aren't necessarily just the Team Bardock units. You can also use Turles as well, so that's great. The friend lead, or the best friend lead, is actually the Tech Bardock, so I would suggest kind of building around that premise of either having Goku's family or storied figures units as obviously your teammates. So that's basically how I would imagine things would go, essentially. So yeah, beyond that, I would say pretty much everything is pretty good. In terms of this team build, obviously we've gone with an AGL Bardock as our lead, who I think is fine. I recently did a review on him. He looks to be in a good position overall. Not as exciting as the Tech Bardock, nowhere near as good either, but still a very solid unit that you can use for these kind of long form events. So if you've been looking for a reason to bust out your AGL Bardock, then this is going to be the best scenario to do so, because he does look really, really good here. The ability for him to stack really helps out overall, and in general he does look really, really solid when you mix them all up together with all the other units. And then beyond that, the rest of the team is completely free to play. We've gone with the full Team Bardock team, basically, that you can get from the game. So we've gone with the entire Team Bardock kind of showdown, and all of these units do great in their respective fields. So obviously we have Tora being a support for the Team Bardock category, as well as also providing health restoration, which is really strong. He also raises his defense, which helps him out in these kind of long form events, which is great. Then alongside him, we're just going to stick alongside the AGL Bardock, because he gives him a little bit of that extra stat boost that AGL Bardock needs to really stay relevant throughout the event. Then we have Shugesh. Shugesh is also a defensive stacker, so he's also going to be on main rotation. and he'll be alongside the Tech Bardock or the Strength Bardock, just depending on which one you like to use more. Both will be fine. Strength Bardock is a great first slot tank with his 50% damage reduction that he'll have alongside his quite sizable defense of over 200k. So he's going to look very, very good. So I do think pairing him up is nicely there. You don't have to worry too much about damage or anything when you have Bardock on rotation, so things work out nicely there. And Shigesh, pairs pretty well with Bardock as well. So I think they obviously share quite a few links, but I think in general they just look really, really solid. Then we have Fasha, Int Fasha, not the physical one. Physical one's a great defensive unit, but the Int one is just a very solid rotationary unit. Her evasion's really where she's going to be fine. She's got a high chance of evading. When there's a ally whose name includes Bardock on the team, which is pretty good. And she also gives support after she evades. This isn't too big a deal because we're going to be floating her, so she'll be giving support basically after we've hit the point where we can take damage. But yeah, she still provides a pretty decent kind of floating evasion based unit that realistically is more than fine defensively overall. So yeah, pretty happy with her. And then obviously lastly, out of the free-to-play units, we've got AGL Borgos, who's just a very solid unit. He greatly raises his attack and defense. He has a sizable attack and defense. He gains an additional attack and defense when facing only one enemy. He also has a high chance of critting, so we can just build him into full additional and just kind of let him do his thing, which I think is fine. He does more than fine just floating around as well, with very sizable defense off of one super, and then generally speaking pretty good defense off of double supers, which is great. And obviously finally we have Tech Bardock, who I just float around mainly because he doesn't need to do anything more, and we need the other units to stack up so that we have a very decent time against the last couple of phases. But yeah, Tech Bardock is pretty solid. I would say he's a very strong unit overall. Obviously huge offensive capabilities with his ability to have attacks effective against all types, his ability to crit, his ability to just do a lot of things, and we're going to be pairing him with the transformed version of Bardock once we get to that stage, because we do want obviously Bardock to have a pretty decent time, and the transformed Bardock and him actually share 5 links, which is really, really good. So then like when it comes down to obviously them being decently linked up, I think that's pretty good. And then in terms of like overall defense, I think AGL Bardock will still technically be lower than Tech Bardock probably at that point, but they'll be decent enough for the final phase, especially with the Vegeta being AGL. So it does help us out to have a tech unit obviously as our friend lead. And like I said, you don't have to use Bardock, but I do think Bardock is probably the best one. He just does a lot of damage, and you can use his active skill as well, which makes him pretty relevant throughout the event. So you can use his active skill to kind of cover things relatively nicely, and I do think they do work pretty well. So yeah, I do think in general most players will be happy with how everything kind of works all together. I do think, at least for me, the team functions well. I don't think there's any glaring weak points. You can obviously get caught out at any given point in time, depending on who gets supered, especially Borgos and especially Fasha in their last slots, especially if there's type disadvantage. But generally speaking, you should be fine. Your stackers do get very, 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 very powerful, or get their defense to high enough point to essentially function really, really nicely. So yeah, I think in general the team does really well, and I don't tend to have any concerns around how well they do. In terms of replacement units, I do think a really strong kind of pseudo replacement for some of the units on this team is the Great Ape Kid Goku, I think he's great. He stacks as well, which is super duper helpful. I think Bardock, LR Physical Bardock, is also really strong as a unit as well, which I think is great. One thing I will say, I do think the Int LR Bardock is not at the requisite level to like handle this event, personally speaking. I just don't think he's there as a unit, which is why I haven't it's why I haven't necessarily like placed him in the team or anything. So yeah, I do think he's maybe just not just there in terms of like overall capabilities to handle the event. Maybe after his ECA, I think then, or their ECA I should say, I think then they'll be good. But yeah, I think in general still pretty solid time, if not just a unspectacular one, basically. But yeah, I think in general you shouldn't have a big problem. You can see here we're popping off all the active skills, having a really good time with it as well. And yeah, I think in general the team does a really good job. And I think for me, there wasn't too much I had to be concerned about. I wasn't too concerned about anything. I wasn't too like phased with anything. I think at the end of the day, the team did a good job, and there wasn't really too much that me as a player had to kind of manage or pseudo manage or do anything like that. So yeah, I think I was quite happy with that overall, and I think I was really quite content with what happened and how everything went. So yeah, for me, fairly good stuff, and yeah, I think overall really strong performance, and it's great that all of these units are fairly accessible. So I think a lot of people won't have like huge problems. Yeah, but yeah, that's basically going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you can leave a like. And you know what? Obviously, if you have any queries, you can leave a comment as well. Always appreciate it, and would love to be able to help anyone out if they're still struggling with this. Obviously, now's a great time to farm the free-to-play Team Bardock. So yeah, but that's it from me. See you guys next time. Bye.